I found a cottage for really cheap in the Northwest Territories. It even came with its own lake. It was listed by the man who built it, Nicholas Robinson. It had been a passion project of his ever since he bought the land, but he needed to move back to the city to take care of his mother. It didn't have much in the way of plumbing, but it had an electric generator, a wood fireplace. It was pretty cozy and well insulated, and the lake was fresh water, clean enough to drink. I actually didn't even need to look at the place before I bought it. I picked up the keys from Nick in town, and he wished me the best and told me to call him if I had any problems. Well, just this past weekend I drove up there. Long drive, believe me, but some of the most breathtaking scenery you've ever encountered. I hadn't realized this, but the cottage was half built over the lake, and one of the bedrooms had a thick glass floor that was actually situated under the water's surface, so you could see into the depths. Nick had really sunk a lot of time and money into this, and I almost felt guilty buying it for what I did. On the far side of the lake from the cottage was an enormous, snow-capped mountain. It was difficult to see through the rain as I drove in, but it towered ominously in the background. I didn't even want to move when I got out of my car. The air smelled so thick and rich and beautiful. There was no thunder or lightning, just endless water drops pounding the surface of the lake, stirring up froth, which collected in little eddies on the edges. There weren't many trees, but when there were, they were tall, beautiful, sweet-smelling pines. I was just about to turn and walk down the boardwalk to the cottage when I saw something in the corner of my eye. Movement on the right side of the lake. There was something causing much larger ripples. My eyes went wide when I saw what looked like the tail of a giant serpent slink into the fractured water. I couldn't take my eyes off the spot for some minutes afterward as bubbles gradually emerged. I was pretty sure there were no snakes this far north, especially not ones that size, but it was far away, so it could have been a trick of the light. I wasn't really sure what to make of it, but at this point I was soaking wet and I just wanted to get warm. The furniture inside the cabin was a little old for my taste, but the appliances in the kitchen were brand new. I excitedly dug into my food supply and stared out the window over the lake once again as I ate. I noticed another feature of the property that I hadn't seen before. There was a rapids coming down the mountain and feeding into the lake. I had brought my kayak thinking it might be fun to paddle around, but white water, well, that was a whole other level of fun. But I was way too exhausted on the first day. It had been a long drive after all, and I got ready for bed a bit early, just as the sun was setting. My jaw hit the floor the first time I opened that bedroom door. Just near the entrance to the room, you could see a bit of aquatic plant life floating just under your feet. But as the bedroom progressed, the lake bed pulled away from the floor, and you really were just staring into some abysmal darkness. The overhead light in the room was bright too, but it couldn't illuminate what lay beneath. This part of the house was supported by wooden posts that also just descended into darkness, and I couldn't help but wonder if this engineering was safe. On the far side of the room from the door was the bed. It had the deepest part of the lake under it as far as the cottage extended, but after I turned out the light and as I lay there, it felt extremely uneasy. The sounds from the lake carried up very easily through the glass floor. All sorts of bubbles and clicks and groans reverberated up as though I was floating into the depths myself. It actually sounded like I was underwater. The experience filled me with awe, but I just felt a little unsafe, and it was hard to get to sleep. But the worst of it came just after I dozed off. I woke up, or maybe I never really fell asleep, but there was a deep rumbling coming from just under my bed. But it wasn't just coming from under the water. There was also a noise coming through the air-touching window, a kind of haunting song, like a chorus of wails. I leapt out of bed and ran for the door. The glass under my feet was literally rattling my bones. It almost made my ankles and knees feel like I was walking on the moon. Terrified, I made it to the doorway and peered back into the abyss through the floor. Only the bedroom extended over the water, so I felt safe as long as I was in the hall. It was much too dark to see anything, especially when the overhead light was on and the glare reflected through the floor. With the lights off, I stared more intently, looking for any sign of movement. The melodies sounded to be produced by an assortment of colossuses, and yet the only thing perturbed in my view was the sand swept around by some invisible underwater currents. After an hour of watching intently, the singing stopped and my interest followed it. But just to feel a little safer, I decided to sleep on the living room sofa. Bright and early in the morning, I kayaked across that lake boldly, excited to check out the rapids. It was a very clear day, and I could see into the water below with ease. Well, at least most of the lake I could see. It was much deeper than I expected, especially at the foot of the mountain, and even with the clear water and natural sunlight, ultimately everything gives way to the haze of distance. I portaged and started scaling the mountain with my kayak alongside the rapids. The run looked pretty smooth, and I was pleasantly surprised. My endurance was a lot better than I remembered it being too, and I made it about 2/3 of the way up the mountain before my cardio hit a plateau. At this height, there was also a natural shelf of rock along the mountain that was a great vantage for checking out my cottage. Filled me with joy seeing my little purchase sitting down there. And the bedroom situation really didn't look like all that from this far away. It really just barely extended over the very edge of the lake. Also from this high up, I had a very clear sense of what was in the lake, and I definitely didn't see any whales or monsters. There were a couple of fish here and there, although it was kind of difficult to discern being so high up. And again, I couldn't really see what the lake looked like at the foot of the mountain as I was too close to it. But I felt a lot more comfortable overall, and I was excited to take the fast way down. I got in my kayak and started barreling down through the rapids. The rapids followed a canal that led around the back of the mountain, and I couldn't see the lake at first. But when I turned that corner, my adrenaline pumped even harder. The lake sat, still some 20 meters below me, and clear as day, in its middle, under the water, was the outline of a massive creature. It had a bulbous body, an extremely long neck, and 4 flippers. I couldn't make out the details, but its shadow could not have been any more obvious. Bubbles were coming up from the outline of its head, and I panicked, trying to look for a way out. The rapids were carrying me to the lake no matter what, and even if I crashed to try to get out, I don't think it would have worked, and could have left me seriously injured if not killed by the jagged rocks. I felt that I had no choice but to see myself through the rest of the way down, and pray that the creature didn't move. The closer I got to being level with the lake's surface, the harder it was to see, and when I was only seconds from hitting the surface of the lake, the creature was completely undetectable, but I still knew it was there. I've never felt so terrified or sick to my stomach. I lost a lot of stability when I hit the lake, but I struggled tooth and nail to regain it, and having balanced, I set off on the quickest route to the shoreline. There was a deep rumbling beneath me, and I really felt how vulnerable I was. Just beside my boat, the creature exploded out of the water. The kayak flipped, and for a moment I couldn't see anything. I was in too a state of turmoil to think about righting myself, but to my surprise, I was lifted out of the water. The bottom of my kayak was lodged between the teeth of what I can only describe as a dinosaur. It had sharp teeth and a bulbous head, but its eyes didn't show violence. It tossed me several meters into the water, probably realizing my kayak didn't taste very good. Having been given a second chance, I righted the kayak and got to shore. I hadn't even noticed how much I'd been screaming, and when I finally got the opportunity to look back from safety, the monster was nowhere to be seen. I sat for hours in my living room, pretty shaken up, but recognizing that it probably couldn't get out of the water. It felt incredibly surreal, and I kept questioning reality. The creature looked like a plesiosaur. I think I remember them from elementary school. Then, it dawned on me that Nick Robinson must have known something. There's no way he didn't see one of these things while building this place. I phoned him up, and he was apologetic. He confirmed that not only one, but a whole community of plesiosaurs lived in the lake, which was primarily under the mountain. He believed that there, in the closed ecosystem under the mountain, many prehistoric creatures were sheltered from the extinction event that took place. He told me they were mostly peaceful, but that I should probably stay out of the lake. Hey guys, thanks for listening to that story. I hope it was scary enough. I wanted to do one on the Loch Ness Monster type creature, but to me that's kind of more of a fascinating and intriguing story than necessarily a scary one, but I hope that you enjoyed it nevertheless. Tune in next Thursday for a brand new original Creepypasta, and tune in on July 11th at 9 p.m. EST for Nightmare Theater, an open book club for nightmares. Until next time. Embrace the beautiful dark.